Okay. Mihirji, you can start now, and please let me know when do you want me to share the PowerPoints.
Yeah, if we can share now, please. Good. So, Mike, welcome to everybody to this third annual Gugoshna conference and to this particular session on pathways to transformation, coastal and delta youth and women. And this is jointly organized under the leadership of ICAD, of course, Tapestry Project and all its partners, of course, Institute for Development Studies as well. And we have eminent panelists here who have worked on the Tapestry project, but also related aspects that we are going to present to you about on the pathways of transformation, coastal and delta youth and women. We are mainly drawing from this is part of a series of 5 different roundtables, which were done under the Tapestry project and IIT Mumbai and other partners of Tapestry project had conducted them in Bangladesh, looking at the Sundarbans there, the Delta area, in India, in Calcutta, looking at the Delta area from that side with the local people, of course, coastal area near Mumbai, in Mumbai, and the coastal area and the desert area from Kutch. So we are drawing from, this is building on that work, not drawing, I'm sorry. And this particular session is going to look at pathways to transformation, coastal and delta youth and women. What I would like to say before we have the panel is that the Tapestry project shows the transformation may arise from below in marginal environments such as Sundarbans Delta, but also coastal areas near metropolitan cities such as Mumbai, and communities facing high levels of uncertainty of not only income and asset, but also the future that they see. And this includes locally led adaptation measures as well. The next slide, please. Tapestry project also showed that that there are 3 pillars. One is that local leadership is very important, which includes youth and women. Adaptive approach is very important. There is no blueprint, there is no straight line that you go ahead for the transformative pathway. It's a fairly meandering, sometimes back and forth. And also it needs a sustained effort, long-term effort, including financial and other support of expertise, knowledge, etc. And I will talk about it very soon. And role of women within this is very important for the pathways related activity. The roundtables and the Tapestry project also came up, next slide, please, is on that the awareness about emerging pathways to transformation must be made more widespread at all levels, and widespread in terms of geographic spread, social spread in terms of included, excluded, but also in terms of the local adaptation levels and measures that are being taken. So that is something that is also coming out from the series of roundtables, and we'll be talking about that in various presentations. Next slide. Other thing that came out, that who and how pathways to transformation will be funded or financed is an area needing immediate attention, not only to individual families, which obviously are struggling, but also to institutions and their alliances. And we have a very good presentation coming up on alliances from Kutch, Sundarbans, and Mumbai that Deep Arthasarthi is going to present subsequently. Next slide. How emerging challenges and potential of pathways to transformation must be governed. And that's a question a lot of people are struggling with, including local adaptation measures and promoters who are pursuing that particular line of activities, who will do what to make them vibrant, democratic, where everybody is able to participate and have their say in what direction collectively we do. And it's not a democracy of majority, but democracy of consensus, and socially just and inclusive must be piloted and observed. So we need to pilot we need to demonstrate, we need to iterate back and forth. And that something came out very clearly from the series of roundtables that we have. Next, please. And last, which came out, is that what measures must be taken to make pathways to transformation protected from the and prepared for compounded or cascading disaster risk, double disaster risk, and that must be studied in depth, starting from visual methods, which was a very important part of the tapestry project, both in Sundarbans and the Delta area. And we have a very good presentation on that coming up from Shivaji Bose. The sequence of presentation is Laila Mehta, the leader for the project, will tell us about the challenges and potential for locally led adaptation. Then Upasana Ghosh will talk about women farmers building resilience with alliances in Delta of West Bengal, this part of Sundarbans. And Adiba Kamal will be talking about women farmers building resilience with alliances in Delta part in Bangladesh. After that, we'll talk about method, the tapestry visual research method, which is both an innovation, if I may say so, in terms of pedagogy as well as a tool. And he'll talk about that in coastal youth and women in Sundarbans. He may also give examples from Bombay and Kutch, where the same method is applied with success and more work is being done on that. And after that, Deep Arthasarthi will talk about building alliances for transformation across Kutch, Sundarbans, and Mumbai, and also across disciplines and partnerships, social science discipline, pure science discipline, local partners, global partners, research partners, action partners, and that's something he's going to cover. We'll have a discussion after that, and that would be moderated by Adiba and Deepa Arthasarthi, and we'll think about the next steps after that. With this, I'd like Adiba, if you would take over, and Laila Mehta can start her presentation. Thank you very much. Welcome to everybody again, and please go ahead. Yes.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Can you, and good evening to some. Can you see my presentation and hear me okay? Yeah. Thank you very much to colleagues at Gobashona, ICAD, Adiba for organizing the Gobashona conference. It's a pleasure to be part of this event for the third year. It's such an amazing conference, really focusing on voices from below in the global south. And it's also led and organized by key actors in Bangladesh, which is the leader in locally led adaptation. So it's really an honor to be here today. As Mihir said, I'm going to talk to you a little about the experiences from the Tapestry project. The project has just concluded, but it feels like we're still carrying on. There's a lot to do. It was a great project funded by ISC, Belmont, North Face, plus several research councils, and we worked across Bangladesh, India, Japan, Norway, and the UK. We had a lot of challenges because of the pandemic, but we also managed to do a lot, and in particular around the alliance building. And working across boundaries, across disciplines is something that we managed to do despite the challenges. As Mihir said, we focus on how transformation can arise from below in marginal environments, characterized by climate uncertainties, but also how these climate uncertainties interact with other socio-economic, political trajectories of change that increase vulnerabilities of local people. And for us, transformation is not incremental, it's more than a transition. It goes beyond incremental adaptation and mitigation. So it looks at deep and structural and all-encompassing changes. It also looks at the politics of adaptation to avoid processes of maladaptation. So we're really interested in these bottom-up processes. We had conceptually, we looked at transformation as praxis, and we had this idea of patches, which is where different alliances come together and try and create bottom-up change. We worked with the poorest of the poor in different marginal coastal environments. So we worked in the mega city of Mumbai along the coast. We worked in the Sundarbans Delta, and we really took a transboundary perspective, which was innovative, which you'll hear about. And then we worked in the drylands of Kutch. And for the people we worked with, climate change was is alternating their livelihoods, home, sense of place and well-being. It's not a distant reality. They are at the front line, but their voices are rarely heard. So processes like Gobashona do give voice to these communities pretty much at the front line. And we're looking at how agencies being asserted by these communities through different alliances in their efforts to tackle climate and other changes. Methodologically, we worked with locally based partners. We had a long durée perspective, so all our partners have been working for a long time in the patches. We used historical methods, ethnography, visual methods that you'll hear about, digital ethnography, which was really important. Natural science was particularly important in the drylands, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And for us, the local perspectives were a starting point in framing our research and focus. So there's a lot of focus now on locally led adaptation. And I think that's because there's been such failures with the INDCs that have focused more on mitigation, on green economy, on net zero, on a lot of greenwashing, where adaptation and mitigation can also be seen as business opportunities, especially in countries like India more than Bangladesh. A lot of questions of equity, redistribution, livelihoods have been ignored. And for us, we were interested in initiatives and innovations that will strengthen livelihoods, and of course, paying attention to questions of existing vulnerability and the fact that a lot of people we're working with lack power and control over assets. Climate change is just one issue that is increasing the vulnerability of these people. So it's very important to be careful about issues of attribution. And as we've heard a lot on this conference, there are lots of dangers of maladaptation. So you can adapt livelihoods at the expense of others, or you can create some intervention one way, which will increase vulnerabilities of others. The focus on locally led adaptation means we need to focus on local knowledges, experiments and alliances, but also be aware of some of the limits to locally led adaptation. So we cannot glorify the community. We have to be aware of the fractures within community, heterogeneity, power relations, gender, caste, ethnic and racial injustices. And be aware of these contradictions. And finally, it's really important to seek hybrid perspectives, draw on hybrid knowledges, place-based knowledges to address power imbalances and to create transformational adaptation. Now, we focused on co-produced alliances around locally led adaptation. We had a whole series of actors, and different colleagues will talk about that in a minute. And we were trying to shift, not just bring different actors together, but also shift some of the reframing and knowledge politics, look at alternative livelihoods and look at community engagement. Now, Upashana and Adipa will talk about this in a minute, but we really took a unified approach to the Sundarbans. They're culturally similar, despite the borders and the boundaries, and ecology and river know no boundaries. Of course, there's been increased politicization and targeting of minorities in both Bangladesh and India. And this has led to undermining of certain local systems or even beliefs like Bon Bibi. Now you have the rise of, more Hindu notions in Indian Sundarbans, and also dilution of this in Bangladesh. And we were really trying to understand the differences in the role of the state, the different countries and partners learn from each other. And through our processes, there was a lot of interesting transboundary learning and exchange. So that's really one thing we want to take forward. There's been a focus on transformative adaptation platform. There's a new app that our partner LLRM has piloted. So I think these are all things that we want to take forward. Adiba and Upashana will talk about the experiments that we did with agriculture. And of course, women played a key role. But it's very important to bear in mind that not all women can participate, and we should also be bringing men on board. We need to focus on questions of the landless, etc. So these were some of the contradictions that came up. In the mega city of Mumbai, we focused on Versova Kolivada, which is a very thriving fishing village in the city, but the fishers there have really gone through a lot of changes in the pandemic due to climate change, due to coastal projects and infrastructure projects that have dispossessed them, that have created pollution, but also created problems with the creeks and the mangroves. So working with our local partner, Bombay 61, we raised the profile of these indigenous coastal communities and their shrinking livelihoods, their access to the sea, and the impacts of uncertainties. There was a really interesting innovation of the net filter, building on local knowledge that sought to reduce the lifeblood for the local coolies. And they really need to fish locally, not just go afar. And this was really successful. It created a big splash, and it will be scaled out to other fishing villages by local actors, maybe even by state agencies. So this is, again, something we want to take forward. How do we push these kind of questions of spatial justice along the coast, encourage more appropriate forms of coastal use, and also reframe some of these ideas of coastal justice from the vantage point of local actors, such as the indigenous fishers, who are actually the original inhabitants of the city. In the dryland of Kutch, we worked on the celebrated Karai camel, the swimming camel, and the herders, the Jat herders. This is a very unique camel breed that browses on land, but can also swim out to the mangroves. And our alliances with local actors, the Camel Breeders Association, Sajivan, but also with scientists from Kyoto University, social scientists from IDS and AIDMI and others in Gujarat, we really tried to push and challenge this dominant notion that the camels and their herders are bad for the mangroves. We instead tried to validate local knowledge that camels actually live synergistically with the mangrove habitats. And through the roundtables that Mihir mentioned, this was communicated to scientists and officials. So we helped challenge this dominant fortress conservation approach. And it was really interesting to work in partnership with the local people, their indigenous knowledge, not romanticizing it, of course, and working with initially skeptical natural scientists and seeing how that could come together. And that was really, really interesting. And really, pastoralism, agropastoralism is an excellent form of local adaptation to climate uncertainties, and it can build livelihoods and climate resilience. But here, this is a very male-dominated community at one level, very patriarchal, and we found it was difficult to engage women in these processes. So moving forward, I think issues of gender justice will also have to be addressed, in such initiatives, because of the time pressures, we largely worked with the key leaders who were all men, amazing people, but obviously, we tried to push that. Now, Shibaji will talk about how we looked at praxis also through participatory arts and visuals and visual ethnography. So engaging with children, with youth and women through paintings, through photography. And that also led to a kind of reimagining of people's own sense of place, be it the coast in Mumbai or the Sundarbans Delta. And this was really focusing on lived experiences and trying to lift hidden and marginalized perspectives and make the invisible visible. And here, the children's art was really very critical. That was the Mangrove School project led by Dr. Saha and Professor Vinita Damodaran, and worked through with children through the pandemic. And children's voices are often absent in climate debates, but we're talking about their future. So it's really important that their perspectives, their anxieties, but also hopes of the future, what they see as transformation and adaptation, come to the fore. So to conclude, I think in our project, we really highlighted the importance of embracing uncertainty and its political nature. Attempts to tame uncertainty through mitigation and adaptation efforts usually fail. We took a critical social science perspective, which really highlighted, when we highlighted the fact that it really needs to be integrated in mainstream climate science, but it's not just critical social science. We have to work together with the arts and humanities, with historians, with natural scientists, because then you have hybrid multiple perspectives and knowledges, and that's the best way to tackle climate and related uncertainties. In locally led adaptation processes, it's really important to tackle power relations, gender, social, and different forms of injustice. Moving forward, how do we decolonize some of the mainstream science, some of the mainstream perspectives around adaptation and mitigation? And focusing on locally led adaptation is one way forward, as well as bottom-up processes of transformation, while being attentive to some of the local contradictions. So I think what we tried to do in this project was we were researching change, but we were also part of the change. And here transdisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity was really, really important. In the Tapestry project, we really tried hard to conceptually reframe marginality and received wisdoms regarding top-down technocentric development, but also these marginal environments and their people. We elicited hidden and marginalized perspectives and practices through the approach we took, the methodological approach. And in practice, working with local partners, we really tried to understand alternative livelihood pathways. But of course, much more can be done. We ran out of time to really look at some of the trade-offs, the unequal gains and benefits, and to further examine implications for social and gender justice. What does this mean for the youth? What does this mean for different groups of women? I mean, a lot of the youth are not interested in these initiatives. They don't want to be pastoralists. They don't want to live in the Sundarbans. Many of them. We saw that also in the paintings. So how do we deal with some of these intergenerational differences? We also found that transformation is contested in spatial and temporal terms. Do we look at it in the here and now? Do we look at it long term? And you come up with different notions then. And obviously, whatever we do, we have to avoid burdens on already marginalized perspectives and communities, and don't really, one shouldn't be romanticizing their resilience, because ultimately it's the rich, it's the powerful, it's capitalism. That's what has to change, more than actually marginalized communities adapting to something that is really, they have nothing to do with. They were not really causing it. So I'll stop there now. Thank you.
Thank you, Laila. Can we have Upashana?
Yeah, hi everyone. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, so shall I share my screen, Adiba, or you? Okay. Okay, and let me try to share my screen. Yeah, is it visible?
Yes.
Yes. So hi everyone, and thank you, ECAT, to organize this beautiful conference every year, and we are getting opportunity for presenting our work. So Laila has already mentioned about our project, and especially in India and Bangladesh part of Sundarbans, we have seen that how the women farmers are building kind of resilience towards the climate change impact through the alliances of community. Okay, just a second. So to 1 minute, 1 second. I have to stop my video because it's not very enlightened in this room. So okay, so with the note Lana has already been set. Let me say about, is my slide changing?
You're still on the first slide.
Okay. Adiba, can you share my slides? I think I can't do that from here.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, please do.
Can you see my screen?
Yes. Yes, thanks. Can you go to the next slide, please? So amid the impact of climate change, like the sea level rise, and as a result of that, the salinity integration in the agricultural field, it is difficult for Hello, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So you can see that the entire Sundarbans are facing the agricultural depletions, and as well as it has an impact on the fish catch, those which were the traditional livelihood of the people. So amidst those changes, what happened that the women farmers, because the male folks who are actually the traditionally the fisher folks and agriculturists, they have to migrate outside the country or outside the state in case of India, and in search of alternative livelihoods. So the community alliances like the civil societies, the agricultural department, and some scientists, along with the women farmers, they have tried to build the seed bank for salinity tolerant crops. So in that crops, it is a kind, definitely the knowledge is from the indigenous seed knowledge, and they have stored the seeds of traditional way, and those varieties of seeds can tolerate the salinity to some extent. So in a way, it is a very co-produced initiatives which can increase the salinity. Who can tolerate the salinity in the to some extent, and kind of giving a food security to the population there. So the most of the farmers through the small input supports, training on the agronomic techniques and seed preservations and creating the farmer champions, this kind of transformative actions were there. And the civil society, along with the communities, they create a platform of the stakeholders to ensure the marketing and seed productions facility. So relevant government departments are also there, and especially the agricultural department, and they are mainly targeting the women as the seed keepers. So here this initiative has a potential transformative elements, because it is directly incorporated the gender and gender integrations in climate change action, and women became the seed keepers, and they became the focus of this kind of interventions. So there are many seed banks now in Sundarbans, and they can conserve like the in situ conservations of 30 or more indigenous vegetable varieties, and active participations of more than 1,000 farmers across the Sundarbans. So definitely this initiative has all the potentials, but our study has came out with some kind of questions that how may these initiatives be transformative amidst the climate change. So first of all, the first questions to look into that is this initiatives be transformative for all, whether it is excluding certain sections of the community or it is a very inclusive one. Does these initiatives can ensure the communities as well as the markets buy-in? So, questioning again on the sustainability of the initiatives, and further in the climate and agricultural policy making. And definitely how far these initiatives has created alliance, a true alliance, a bottom-up alliance between the stakeholders. So if we try to answer the questions, definitely these questions are very complex to answer. The exclusions, if we look into the exclusion or inclusions in this kind of initiatives, there are certain permanent exclusions. So who are basically excluded from this kind of initiatives? It's basically the landless sections, the landless farmers who are, and in Sundarbans, more and more people, especially in the Indian part, more and more people are getting are losing their lands due to the sea level rise and related floodings, related high erosions level. So they're losing their lands. Who are losing their lands, they have a kind of permanent exclusions from this kind of initiatives. Another thing is that more of the farmers who have a small piece of land, they are unable to get enough profit from this kind of initiative. So this is a kind of a permanent exclusion is happening. Now, the market, definitely that's very important component here is the market. So who are the buyers? Who can buy these produces of the salinity tolerant rice and vegetable varieties? Because it is not taste as same as the original varieties, so the normal varieties, and that's why it is not liked by the locals. They themselves is not consuming those, and but to some extent there is a market in the nearby city like Kolkata. But where to sell, where they can sell that, because from the remote islands of Sundarbans to get market in the Kolkata's thing, it's very difficult for a normal farmer. So establishing a link between the formal market with the city store, though the CBOs are trying to create the linkage, but it is still not happening. So again, there are some technical issues also. This kind of cultivations need the organic manuring. It needs the communities to, being trained by the CBOs. It is very time and labor incentives. The production cost is very high to compare to the, the general varieties. The labor, the total agricultural labor strength is very less in Sundarbans now, as most of the men are out of the islands. So the farmers, the female farmers are not getting enough labor strength to do this intensive agriculture. And definitely it is highly susceptible to further floods and cyclone, which is very frequent in Sundarbans due to the increasing climate uncertainties. So policy, in terms of policies, yes, definitely the government of West Bengal has already incorporated these in their agricultural policies. That means they are distributing this salinity tolerant seeds free of cost to the farmers. But at the same time, they are not, buying the produces, as there is no market. So they are giving the seeds, they are encouraging the farmers to do that, but they are not buying the things. So that is a kind of a policy fallacy that's happening, and the farmers who are actually producing the salinity resistant crops, they are not getting any market help for the marketing from the government department also. So for the NGOs, the alliances, the main heart of the alliances, the civil societies, they have their own kind of limitations as well as facilitations. They are very close to the communities. They know that their problem. They know the locally led adaptations, how it should be. But at the same time, a dominant narrative is like the successful. I mean, it is very successful because it is technical. So, but not every time the technically sound thing is going to be a people-centered one. So that's differences is making these initiatives very difficult to sustain in the Indian part of Sundarbans. So it is basically the implicit narrative is that it is needed, but it is whether it is needed or not, it is not important. But the important thing is that what the organizations or the alliances wants to do. So this kind of things is definitely limiting the sustainability component of this transformative initiative. But the women farmers are taking these issues to the local level panchayat members, to the block level members, to the administrations, up to the state level. They even during the tapestry intervention, they even meet to the environment minister also. So they are raising their voices, these local farmers, and with their full aspirations, and they are really, these women farmers of Sundarbans, they are really making that gender norms and trying to be resilient with the climatic changes happening every day in their lived experiences. So we will definitely like to go further, that how far this initiative is basically work on their sustainability and whether it can be a true sense of transformative or not. That is, the time will tell, but definitely to be transformative, it needs to be more inclusive and it needs to be more bottom up. So that's from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Upashanati, for sharing the updates. Now I will share the Bangladesh part presentation. So let me share my screen first. I hope I'm audible. Everyone can hear me well, because we have a power cut situation here. So I hope
We can hear you.
Yeah, thank you. So my colleague Mihirji, Laila, Upashana have already discussed about the tapestry project, what we have done, what were the objective, the study areas. Now I'll be speaking about the women farmers building resilience with alliance in Delta Bangladesh. As in the tapestry project, we also had a study area in Bangladesh that is in Sundarban. As Sundarban is divided in Indian part as well as in Bangladesh part. So from Bangladesh side, ICAD with the help of local organization Caritas have actually tried to incorporate the research from this side. So in Bangladesh side, our study area was in two areas near Sundarban. One is Burikwalini Union and another is Munshiganj Union, where in these two unions, we have covered 4 villages, Datinakhali, Jelekhali, Kultuli, and Bamia. As you can see in the map this is the map of Shamnagar Upazila, where we have covered 2 unions, and there is also a Bangladesh map here, where you can see where the Satkhira Upazila is. And then women, most of this picture that I have actually tried to cover in this presentation are taken by the female farmers who were actually conducted the interesting approach that we have done in the tapestry during the COVID situation, that is photo voice and digital diary. Most of these pictures are taken by them. As you can see, the left picture is the bunch of female farmers in Kultoli village. They are actually describing me that how they are regarded as most resilient, but still they are they're the most vulnerable. Still, they're trying to be the most resilient. So as a situation, as my colleague Pashana mentioned, that due to after any disaster, most of the men are try to actually look for work, and they try to leave their village, and in search of leave their village and move to other cities. In that case, the women remains at the home with their children, with other family members, and they are the vulnerable because they do not have any resources, they do not have any power, they do not have any way to actually cope with the situation. In that case, actually, the women have started in those areas to try to actually capacitate themselves, try to make them resilient with the situation actually. So with the help of local organizations like Caritas Bangladesh, there are some other local NGOs working there to capacitate the local people actually. So in our project, the female farmers have taken training from Caritas Bangladesh to learn about agriculture activities. As all of you know that the south coast area region of Bangladesh is quite saline, and day by day the salinity is increasing. So due to salinity, agricultural activities is quite difficult there, because it's not possible to actually plant anything and it will grow, and there is scarcity of pure water. So the women are trying to learn, actually try to learn from Caritas that how they can use that saline water or pure water, how they can store it some water, and how they can use that water for their vegetation. And if they can do some vegetational activities in their house, then it will ensure their food food availability actually, and then they can sell the extra vegetable in the local market. In that case, they can have some cash actually for themselves actually to run the family while their male or their husband is not at home. So in this picture, actually, the women is actually cultivating vegetables for her family, and this cultivation is doing back in the backyard of her house. And she, in terms of the water issue, they actually try to have a community pond in middle of their village, so that during rainy season there is they can store the rainwater in that pond, and later they can use that water for cultivation. And there is also rainwater harvesting system is also a common practices in those areas. So women try to have water storage during the rainy season so that they can use it for their drinking purpose as well for the vegetable purposes. And currently women are actually trying to grow many types of vegetables in those saline prone areas. So this is how actually they're trying to be resilient with the help of local organization. And then this is an interesting story that we have covered actually. We have come across, like earlier, as those areas are saline prone, shrimp cultivation, crab cultivation is quite a common and benefited actually business. So people are used to not interested in the vegetation or cultivation practices because they face more loss for vegetable cultivation, as there is no water sources, pure water sources, water sources, as saline water is everywhere over there. So after Cyclone Isla, some of the farmers have tried to cultivate paddy, and they have faced the same loss that they used to have during the, on shrimp cultivation. But the case is the paddy loss is the amount of loss is very less rather than the shrimp or the crab cultivation. So this village farmers have started actually to cultivate vegetables rather than crab farming and shrimp farming. So this is a common scenario now that you can see while visiting the villages, that every households try to cultivate their portion of vegetable in the backyard or beside their house, so that they don't have to actually depend on market, or they don't have to depend on market to buy daily vegetables. And then there are some interesting agriculture activities that women are doing actually. Most of these activities are done by women. They are taking help from their husbands. But the first picture that you can see is a tower garden, which is really useful during flood situation, because during flood chances are very high that your crops will be washed away. But if you do in the tower garden, then chances are less that your soil won't get washed away, and there will be less loss for flood. So tower gardening is quite a common practice over there. And then they're doing some other cultivation. And the last picture that you can see is respondents of this project actually try to show that they have very small space beside their home, or some of them don't have any space. So they try to have vegetable cultivation in a stored way, so that they can have more vegetables from a small space. And this is an interesting picture that from Shobita Rani, respondent, who tried to actually use fertilizer as well as pesticides for the vegetables by using indigenous knowledge. They do not like to actually buy the market pesticides or fertilizer. They try to have their own in their, they try to make it own in their backyard. So she's actually making the fertilizer for it. And then there is an interesting thing is storing the seeds. So most of the houses actually try to have stored their seeds, as my colleague Upasana have mentioned, so that they can use these seeds for cultivating next year or next season. So there is less actually wastage from households, and they can save, and they don't have to buy seeds from the other from the market. And in terms of the market situation, women actually have informed that sometimes in the market, men are not interested to buy vegetables from them. They're not actually interested to have business with the women. So that's an issue that they face actually over in those areas. And then the women's also don't have the voice actually in the male dependent voice. They can't have their voice actually. So these are the situation that they face during or living in there. So that's a photo of a bunch of female farmers who were part of this tapestry project and are really looking forward to have this type of initiative in future, so that they can learn more, they can actually capacitate themselves to cope with that situation. So I will stop here and hand over the floor to my colleague Shivaji.
Thank you, Adiba. If the presentation can be shared from your end. Thank you. Thanks. So I had, Adiba had already spoken quite a bit from the visual methods that were done in the Bangladesh Sundarbans. And Upashana too had, said a part of it through the action research that was done in the Indian Sundarbans. Now, the visual arts over the last 4 years has aimed to sketch issues of vivencia, lived experiences in tapestry representing climate change, uncertainty, and transformative actions in South Asia through different methods. Now, we have carried out visual methods on all our transformative patches. But for this session, we would like to concentrate on the transboundary learning. Now, this presentation highlights the efforts of my co-researchers, Upashana, Adiba, Mahmuda, and Anindita that Laila was speaking about, who did a fantastic job with the arts and the batik paintings. Now, they were researching since pre-COVID times. Now, this is something that we want to, share with you. This is in pre-COVID times, and this research was a challenge with, going through the entire journey of COVID, lockdowns, and for Sundarbans, the cyclones. So through the local initiatives, local, archives, photos and narratives, paintings, and the stories of history, and a sort of sense of place, were told from the one vantage point of marginalized communities that are at the forefront of climate change and its uncertainty and transformational locally led adaptation through the daily lives. Next slide, please. So the stories have been derived from knowledges built from shared experiences of the communities. bearing the brunt of climate change, in Sundarbans, particularly through a variety of these participatory methods. Now, these stories not only aim or predict change, but are able to, try to understand, reimagine, and transform reality. So, in the context of socio-political transformations in these marginal landscapes, the participants have tried to weave in the stories of uncertainty, hope, to the lens of women and male farmers, youth, children from different parts of Sundarbans on, as Upashana and Adiba has mentioned, on sustainable agricultural practices and transformative locally led adaptations. Now, not only the realities, but it's also, they also permeate the dreams and hopes across the Sundarbans Delta, which is also fundamental to understand resilience and building shared vision at the local level. So we have adapted the methods. If you can see the method mix we have used, we have adapted the method starting from the central canon of photo voice, in which we went into the project with a fair knowledge about how to use it, but then went into digital diaries, participatory filming, use arts, batik, and dye prints. And the process of reflection and reflexivity through all these methods is directly linked to action for climate justice and shaped by an understanding of history, culture, and local context. This provided a scope for co-creation and and of knowledge to support inclusion in policy in certain times and in certain domains. Next slide, please. So Adiba had already mentioned about the digital photo diary. Now, digital photo diary were particularly, helped us to do remote research during COVID, the attending lockdown, and when it was not possible to do, group methods. Now, it helped navigate our research contexts, uncertainties like climate shocks and pandemic situation. So methods like digital diary helped us to understand the perception of the sensitive population with less voices, like the migrants, the women, households, etc. Now, more importantly, the method helped us to understand the sensitive populations that cannot tolerate direct observations, particularly during times of distress. Now, if you look at both these two photos, and now the left-hand photo was taken by a member of a female household, who the narrative that she shared is that the lockdown has put extra pressure on female household like this, as no remittances were coming from males who has migrated and have been struck, due to the lockdown. And this extra pressure on this female household, a bit of it was offset by this growing indigenous vegetable farming as a sole means to take care of the livelihood. And on the right is a poignant photo of a father, and the cycles he mentioned are like the traces of his sons. Both of them have got struck in Kerala, another Indian state, for the walk during COVID. So as we see this research process, this went beyond academic outcomes. It was more empowering, as it was less controlled by the researchers and helped in easy knowledge exchange when face-to-face interaction was not possible. And it helped capture the day-to-day experience with nuances. So next slide, please. Yeah, now through photo voice, and this was one of the central, visual methods that we had planned from beginning of the project. Now, different stories were told, through different photographs which have been captured, and different reflections emerged through this method. And needless to say, this offers marginalized people a voice and the possibility to engage in, critical dialogue around their realities, as we saw through facilitation through our roundtables. We had both groups. We had and across both the Sundarbans, we had women or youth group, and in this part of the Sundarbans, there's an Indian part, and the Bangladesh part, we had a more of a mixed group. And that the photographs were then presented in discussion meetings among participants and others, and generating analysis and reflections. that these narratives were created for a series of photo stories using selected photographs chosen by the participants. Now, each story illustrated a key theme of importance to them, and we saw that it helped in opening up the debate and broadening out the range of perspectives on the issue. We then had them, present at the blocks at the union levels, and in Dhaka, it was presented with the Buri Gwalini Union, and we invited the union representative, and at the block level in West Bengal, this part of Sundarbans, district level, and at the transboundary stakeholder meetings at Dhaka and Kolkata. And we are now planning to, globally share them through a dedicated visual methods website. And one of the highlights was the farmers and fishers from both Sundarbans presenting at the transboundary stakeholder meeting in Dhaka, and a tribal photo voice women participant presenting at a site session in the recently concluded COP. Next slide, please. Thank you. So about the arts project, this was about, this came out, this we call originally called the Mangrove School paintings. It came out through it. We had oral narratives, painting narratives, and written narratives, all from women from very remote, remote places across Sundarbans, and we had workshops with them, and they were co-sharing, co-learning workshop. And after the first phase, the demand from the children for income generation, and then there was a next series of workshop for batik and dye arts, and that workshops were held, and the motifs were used. That was used. It was concentrated on the unique flora and fauna of Sundarbans, the uncertainty around them, the reimagination of of the landscape, and through the paintings, the children displayed quite activism. Next slide, please. Can we go to the last slide? Thank you. So the tapestry mangrove paintings were, hugely admired. This is the point that we want to share. They were usually admired and shown in popular exhibitions in the Indian Museum, to general audience in places like Sussex, and there has been demand for more such exhibitions to be shown to the general audience, including experts, civil society practitioners, school and college children, to reach the transformative efforts and future livelihood strategies of the Sundarbans Islanders. Yes, and before we end, we want to give the drawing credits to the photo voice youth women and male groups, and the digital diary participants, our tapestry researchers, and school children from Kultuli, Raidiki, Sundarbans. We also have a film which was a participatory film. If we have time later in this session, we can also show this. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite Dr. Partha Sharathi to share.
Thank you. I hope I'm clearly audible.
Yes.
Thank you very much to ICAD and to Adiba especially for organizing this, and for regularly ensuring that our project gets a chance to present our findings at the Gobeshona conference. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm going to speak about the different kinds of alliances that we put together and built, and which are sustaining even after the project ended, because we think this is an important theme to talk about when we're talking, when the idea of transformation comes about. So Laila told us about the idea of adaptation and the need to go beyond adaptation, and what does transformation actually involve in terms of practice. So one of the key issues when it comes to transformation, therefore, is the building of different kinds of alliances. And I'm going to talk about 5 kinds of alliances, roughly for about 1 minute each. So In the project, across all the 3 patches, we were very clear that transformation involves engaging with different problems of power, addressing issues of justice, and making sure that when we focus on communities and community-based transformation, we do not lose sight of the issue of equity or inequality. Therefore, it is very essential that we try to build different kinds of hybrid alliances and promote knowledge co-production, as Laila mentioned in her opening presentation, and which was touched upon in the later presentations as well. And of course, this kind of knowledge co-production, hybrid alliances has to happen in ways that also incorporate approaches from different disciplines. So transdisciplinarity is something that was central to the project, and especially in a context where a big chunk of the time was taken away by the pandemic, and we could not actually build alliances and work with them on the ground. We did face a lot of challenges, but I think we also learned a lot of lessons. And the fact that we explicitly attempted to put together these alliances ensure that even if during the pandemic a lot of us were not able to travel, the local alliances continued to sustain the work that we began in 2018 and 19. So of the 5 kinds of alliances that I want to talk about, the first is the alliances across different academic and other kinds of disciplines. So the project drew from researchers, activists, and other actors who came from a background in social sciences and development studies, communication and media, history, architecture and urban planning, ecology, art and visual methods, and so on. The fact that so many different disciplines came together and we were able to learn from each other, this ensured that, as especially came out in the last few presentations, we had different kinds of approaches which we experimented with in trying to learn more about uncertainty and marginalization and the pathway towards transformation. We were able to use different kinds of methods, including the very extensive use of visual methods, as Shivaji just told us. We also worked on merging historical understanding with mapping and GIS based on satellite images, so that we have a better idea of the temporal transitions that has happened in the past, and that is required for us to have a more sustainable pathway to transformation. This kind of transdisciplinarity meant that we also engaged very deeply with ideas of framing. So whose framing, whose visions, whose aspirations, what kind of conceptualization do we look at when we're talking about issues of justice, of livelihoods, of equity, of gender, and so on. The transdisciplinarity also ensured that on the one hand, we were dealing with very rigorous scientific evidence, while also looking at perspectives from above, from middle and below. We were able to better understand the barriers to transformation, the dark side of transformation. And we were able to be critical of our own selves and our dominant paradigms, but also sometimes of community aspirations, which tend to hide the inequalities within those localities, especially along lines of gender, caste, and so on. And that's why I think giving more voice to women, children, those people who are not articulate, using techniques like paintings, photos, these were all significant outcomes of the transdisciplinary approach. The second kind of alliance that we built was across countries. So one of the interesting things that happened was that the International Science Council, which was one of the founders of this project, explicitly asked some of us, especially myself and Mihirji, to focus on how, what kind of leadership, what kind of skills, what kind of capacity building, what kind of alliances we in the Global South are able to build through these kinds of projects. And so it was not simply about flow of knowledge, of skills, of approaches, which was one way. There was a two-way flow of knowledge, of skills, of perspectives, of visions, of aspirations, and so on, so that some of the partners who were deeply rooted in the field were able to travel to our partners in the global north and vice versa. we also, one of the interesting things about the project was also the transboundary kind of collaboration across India and Bangladesh, um, which gave us fresh new insights, not just for understanding the problem, but for thinking about new kinds of governance mechanisms that are required when political boundaries cut across ecological regions. And some of these alliances that we built across countries continue to sustain beyond the project. But more importantly, I think the lessons that we learned are quite invaluable. For example, Bangladesh may be a smaller country compared to India, but is much far ahead in terms of research, in terms of capacity, in terms of institutions in dealing with climate change and disasters. So what could Indian partners learn from them? Or when partners from around the world visited Kutch or talked to pastoralists in Kutch to ask them about how they were doing during the pandemic, they asked us in return about whether they cannot be of any help, because they were able to sustain very well during the COVID because of the kind of contexts and environmental situations they were located in. So the poor and the marginalized are the subjects of the project, but we don't necessarily look upon them as people who don't have different kinds of capacities. So the alliances across countries made us realize that the poor and marginalized have local knowledge. They have an ability to come up with alternatives and solutions. And these transformed the ways in which partners from different countries interacted with each other and ultimately produced different kinds of outputs for the project. The third kind of alliance is the partners within the Tapestry project itself, which consists of over 25 different partners, drawing from academia, NGOs and civil society, community-based organizations, activists, and to some extent the government also, which was not so stable in terms of participation in the project. So it was truly a hybrid alliance of partners within the project itself. But what was more interesting was that as the project continued and grew, the local partners also established new partnerships with others who were interested in similar issues. And that expansion of alliances, I think, is one of the important outcomes of this project, which will help it to sustain beyond the life of the project itself. So this building of new alliances, the recognition and acceptance of the local partners from local communities, the amplification of their voices and work through the media in the form of documentaries, print media, through the BBC, through regional channels, I think these have given additional strength to the alliances that we built up in carrying out and implementing this action research project. The fourth kind of alliances refers to different kinds of actors and institutions that need to be brought together for any concrete project of transformation, especially reducing uncertainties for most marginalized communities, whether they are pastoralists, fishers, or island communities in the Sundarbans. So, and here we did not have a very conventional idea of actors and institutions because, as you can see from the findings presented earlier, children and women were regarded as important stakeholders. In Mumbai, for example, we were not just dealing with government officials at a higher level, but when it came to flood risk mitigation, we were also talking to local municipal level, ward level government officials who had interesting ideas and who played a very significant role in flood risk mitigation that is not always recognized. So we looked at neighborhood associations, producer firms, for example, milk marketing and processing in Kutch, and of course, research organizations. So whether it is agriculture or water or fisher association or pastoralism, different kinds of actors were brought together during this project, and as reflected in the way in which the outputs of the project and the media reported on the findings, we could see that the impact of the project was not just in terms of influence on government policies, institutions, and stakeholders, but how the different actors and institutions at the local level, they formed their own networks and alliances. And I think this is very important because they generate and impose sustained pressure on policymakers and state agencies and on decision making. So that's something that we hope to chart and map going ahead in future, maybe through other projects if they are able to sustain. And finally, the A fifth kind of alliance that has emerged from this project are alliances within communities. So as I said earlier, one of the important areas of interest for us was to focus on issues of equity and justice. We did not want to ignore the inequalities along the axis of power, class, gender, caste, ethnicity, and so on. This is important because internal conflicts can and are usually exploited by the state and other actors to pursue dominant agendas. Therefore, it was very important for us to initiate conversations during the project within local communities, provide a platform for dialogue and discussion. So in Mumbai, Warsaw, for example, in one of the roundtables that we organized, there were multiple voices and perspectives, which can also be seen as counterproductive and not conducive to transformation, but we saw it as the beginning of transformation, because where conflicts prevent dialogue and discussion around transformation, this kind of a roundtable where you have shared understanding of problems, even if aspirations are different, these kinds of roundtables where there is the possibility of an identification of the sources of problems. So in the project, we looked at Paulo Freire's idea of praxis and conscientization. And this identification of problem emerges from that approach, where people, despite having different understandings of the problem, had a commonality in terms of the critique of power, a critique of dominant development paradigms, the identification of solutions which benefits all of them, and of course the emergence of new voices which were possible through the roundtables and the project that we carried out. So I'd like to conclude by saying that any project of transformation, apart from a very strong focus on the identification of the problems and the identification of alternate solutions, this kind of an alliance building is something that's very important for us to ensure that the transformation is able to sustain and does not descend into what we have referred to as the dark side of transformation. So for it to remain positive and address issues of justice and equity, different kinds of alliances are very important. I'll stop here.
As we have 15 minutes more, maybe we can share the recording for photo voice as suggested by Shivajita. If you allow, I would like to share that.
আপনাদের সবার ছবি পাশাপাশি আমরা আপনাদের পরিচয় বলতে নাম এবং যেই জায়গায় আপনারা থাকেন। আপনি ছবিটা কেন ছবিটা আপনি এই ছবিটা আপনি মানে ঘর বাড়িকে রক্ষার জন্য আপনারা এই ব্যবস্থা করে থাকেন।
গিয়ে একটা বাস্তবমুখী অভিজ্ঞতা হচ্ছে। সেটা হচ্ছে যে আমাদের গ্রামের মেয়েরা সামনে কথা বলার একটা সাহস বা অভিজ্ঞতা ছিল না। সেই জায়গাটাতে দাসের সঙ্গে বসে একটা কথা বলার মতো মনোবল তৈরি করতে পেরেছে। সব থেকে বড় অভিজ্ঞতা হচ্ছে যে নিজেরা যেহেতু গ্রামাঞ্চলের মধ্যে থাকি, কোনগুলোর দ্বারা কি কি ক্ষতি হতে পারে আমাদের মধ্যে, সেই অভিজ্ঞতাটা চোখে দেখলেও অতটা নিজেদের মধ্যে স্বচ্ছ ধারণা ছিল না। সেটা ফটো তুলে এবং দর্শের সঙ্গে বসার পরে সেখানে একটা ছবির দ্বারা যে বুঝিয়ে দেওয়া হয়েছিল,
বিশ্ব উন্নয়নের কবলে পড়ে আজকে এই বিশ্ব
তার প্রমাণ আমরা বিগত কয়েক বছরে সমুদ্র উপকূল অঞ্চলে বিভিন্ন বিভিন্ন রকম ঝড় দেখা দিয়েছে।
Hi, Lala. We have some power cut issues over here. Do you want me to replay the recording?
No, don't worry. It's fine.
So we have 10 more minutes. And I can see Sanjeevda in the attendees list.
And Shababa is there, Sumaya is there, so if they can also.
Sanjeevda, would you like to add something? You can unmute yourself. Or Sumaya Apu.
Hello.
Yes, Sanjeevda.
Hello. Thank you all. A good presentation in Gobeshona session. I think that details are discussed here and already, and we see that the pictures are saying something, and this is for voice or digital diary. It's a good thing, and our community and participants, Sundarban's participants, already learn more from this research project. This is not only research in silently, but community together doing something. What is future and what to be doing? So details are doing in this tapestry project. I think that, and this is a good project of 3 passes. So it was very learning, and the correspondingly learning process was good in this process also. And I think that that is more benefited with works with the teams of Tapestry. Thank you all.
Hello, everyone. This is Sumaya. Uh, I had the opportunity of being a part of this project earlier, and it's really wonderful to see the advancement that has been made eventually, and all the presentations and all the learnings that you have shared. It's very enriching. From my personal experience, I would also like to share that I have actually seen what a huge impact this visual method of research makes in the perception of people. You know, when we go into the community, when we learn about various interventions, about various adaptation measures that they are incorporating in their lifestyles, to make all these things sustainable and it's very important that people they have a perception of shared knowledge and shared community feeling, or you can say a shared mode of understanding about the whole concept. And the way this visual participatory method has engaged the local people and made them aware about the problems around them, about their not only the problems and also the opportunities that they have around them. Uh, this will in turn in future will remain, you know, in depth into their own minds as well. They will remember it while going ahead, which mere workshops or when people from outside, various NGOs or CSOs, when we go from outside and we try to tell them, narrate them about particular things, maybe for a particular time it remains into their mind, but they eventually forget, you know. And this way, making them involved in realizing their problems and making them involved in also realizing their opportunities, it makes a huge mark in their life, I would say. uh, I had learned a lot while being a part of this project, and it has been wonderful to see how it is going ahead, I would say. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Very good presentation, I would say. Over to you, Adiba.
Thank you, Sumayapu, for your insightful discussion. So as we have actually come to end of the session, I would like to request all of our colleagues to turn on your camera so that we can take a photo, screenshot actually.
I think Mihir Bhatt would like to give a few closing comments, especially drawing from the 5 roundtables that he conducted, if there is time.
Yes, we have 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. Samraisa, can you hear me? Abhida, yeah. No, this is a great pleasure to have this pathways to transformation, coastal and delta youth and women, and both in terms of locally led adaptations and the potentials or opportunities about women farmers on both sides of the delta and their alliances, what they can do and what they are struggling to do, and a different method, and further how alliances across partners and disciplines are doing. So a lot of material which is already done and what could be done. From my point of view, and please correct subsequently, but I think 4 clear streams of further action and further studies or research comes out. And I'm building on what Salimul Haq Saab had said during the roundtable in Dhaka and building on that. And one is to open. And this opens up a whole range of eyes in terms of what to see, what to observe, what kind of insights to collect, what kind of possible views and perspectives to develop, both visual methods, but also other. So that's one is sort of this opening of this pathways to transformation. That's one thing which is coming up to me. Second is about deepening the thinking that already exists in terms of pathways, and both in terms of thinking which is coming out from various expertise and various experiences, but also thinking which is coming out from what Salimul Haq Saab says, on the ground, the experiments that are going on, and on the ground, the efforts that are going on. So deepening of that thinking on the pathways to transformation related studies and action. The third is broadening the perspective that we already have, on livelihood, for example, gender, for example, alliances, for example, but broadening that further in terms of various methods that we are using to build the perspective, and not only textual perspective or numerical perspective, but also visual perspective of how this is seen, not only from outside in, but inside out, as far as adaptation in the coastal delta and youth and women are coming up. And the last way ahead or next step possibly is to look at the widening of the actions and alliances, that if these people within the project can do this, how more people joining up can do even more, and how do you sort of outreach, strengthen, further build alliances to do the work that needs to be done as far as the pathways to transformations are required. So these are the 4 areas of opening, deepening, broadening, and widening I would like to suggest as next steps. And in more concrete terms, some sort of a larger action research program or project around locally led adaptation, keeping these 4 things in mind, would be very useful as a next step. Thank you. Thank you, Adiba, to you and Ikad, of course, all the panel members, Laila, Mehta, Upasna Ghosh, Adiba, Kamal, Shibaji Bhai, Deepa Arthasarthi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mihir Bhai. Now, I would like to request the Zoom team to take the screenshot.
It's taken. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you so much, Adiba, for organizing this and great conference. Lovely to be part of it again. You're working very hard, round the clock, all of you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
It was a very nice panel.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.